the DSOs that have grown the right way are still adding practices. They have a lot more boxes they need to check when they are buying a practice.
AI will enter dentistry or has entered, and so we see rev cycle management. We see all these things changing. You being at the forefront of this information, and what are you seeing is how deals are getting done, how they're getting analyzed, diligence, the whole thing.
When we track the DSO deal roundup every month, I think what you see is
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Office Hours for Practice Owners. I'm Justin with Marti Law Group, and today I want to dive into what I would call signals versus noise and what's actually happening in the DSO marketplace. There's no shortage of information in the dental and the DSO world. Every week we hear deal announcements, platforms emerging, recap stories, conferences, and lots of opinions about all of it. The challenge, what I find, is not really the access to information anymore. It's like an overwhelming amount of information, but it's where to get the right information. And in our world, for deal making, we work with a lot of practice buyers, sellers, folks partnering, scaling. They're getting a lot of, secondhand information. My friend sold for this, or, I got that multiple from this person. And so it leads to a lot of confusion and, frankly, probably a lot of poor decision making in how they're operating and running their businesses. So I feel fortunate enough to get the preeminent voice of the DSO industry here for a few minutes. Bill Neumann is the co-founder and CEO of Group Dentistry Now. For anyone who doesn't know, I think most of our listeners probably know, but Bill is the guy, and Group Dentistry Now is the hub for all things DSO. So Bill, first of all, thank you so much for the time.
Thanks, Justin, for the invite. This is going to be a lot of fun, and appreciate the opportunity to talk about what's going on in the industry. It's certainly never a dull moment.
It's not. And, if anyone has, I think, like I talk about the signals versus the noise and really a pulse on what's happening in the market, I think it's you. And I actually have to tip my hat to Bill, because I was at an event I won't name, but I was in Texas at one point last year giving about a 5-minute TED Talk type of speech, and it was like literally the clock's ticking. It was during lunch. There was no one in attendance except for one gentleman sitting in the front who was kindly listening as everyone talked over me, and that happened to be Bill. So Bill was kind enough to give me a few minutes and let me ramble on.
There were a couple more people there. It wasn't just me, but it was you were competing with lunch is difficult for sure.
It is. Yeah, I understand that too. I probably would have chose lunch. So tell us, if we can, just to start it off, a little bit about your journey, because obviously you've been doing Group Dentistry Now for a number of years, but you didn't start there. So I'd love to hear kind of the evolution and how you got to where we are now.
Well, it's interesting. You kind of led things off with a lot of information out there. There's a lot of noise. And if you go back to when Kim Larson, who's the co-founder of Group Dentistry Now with me, started Group Dentistry Now in 2014, there was no information at all. I mean, and Kim, who does a lot of the content, she's our operations. She does operations and a lot more than that. But she's back then in 2014 and 2015 and 2016, those early years, there wasn't anything. So DSOs were kind of undercover. They weren't even called DSOs then, or maybe that terminology had just come out. It was group practice, and then they changed it to dental service or dental support organization, I think, to give it a better definition. But there was nothing out there, because I think there was this negativity associated with DSOs. I think maybe that's kind of coming to the surface again, and we can talk a little bit about that. Some of it's justified, some of it isn't, but kind of is what it is. But there was no content, except maybe negativity. So we would look around, and Kim would search, and we'd find something and do some interviews with people. Some didn't want to talk. They're like, what are you doing? Like, we don't even understand what you're doing. Is this good or bad for us as group practices? Well, now we've got more information than I think people in your audience probably can digest. And there's a lot of mixed information. So if I hear multiples are really low, I heard multiples are high. This group is offering this. Nobody's doing deals anymore. It's really pretty confusing. So I think we went from one extreme to the other. No information to more information, and then ever. You hear disinformation, all those terms that didn't exist before, and there's probably a little bit of that in the industry now. So yeah, just to kind of go back, I started in the industry. I have a finance background, but was in a sales role for a Swiss dental manufacturer in Northeast Philadelphia, New York, and then was their national sales trainer and then a regional manager. So that's how I got into dental and sales, and then started a small networking website in 2008 with Kim Larson. She and I started that, sold it to a medical publisher. It was called Dental Sales Pro, connected manufacturers and distributors. I sold that to a medical publisher, got into publishing, learned that side of the business, helped them run a couple dental magazines. And then Kim, who was traveling with me at the California Dental Association, she started to talk to some of these group practices and DSOs at the event, and then some of the vendors, and realized there was no content. So we figured this seemed to be a trend that already happened in medical, and we figured dentistry wasn't immune to it. So we thought we'd kind of get out ahead of things and started Group Dentistry Now in 2014. And fast forward to 2026, it's amazing. A couple thousand articles, 236 podcasts and webinars and a weekly newsletter, and just really happy to kind of sit in the middle of both what's going on the industry side of things and then what the providers are doing as well. So we kind of sit in an interesting position.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, and you really do cover all the bases. I'm checking it regularly, the weekly deal roundup, what's happening in the space on an M&A side. Obviously, I'm intrigued by that world because that's the world I'm in, but the tech, even legal, you really cover everything. So it is cool to finally have I shouldn't say finally, but to have a one-stop shop where I think all the information has been aggregated here, and it is pretty much the signals of the market. It's not a lot of fluff and a lot of noise.
Yeah, thank you. There's so much going on out there that never thought we'd get to a point. We started with a monthly newsletter and then went to every other week, and now we're weekly with the news, and probably publish. We drop at least a podcast a week, 1 to 2 webinars a month, and probably 4 to 5 articles a week. So there's just a lot going on, and we don't even cover it all. So.
Yeah. So I'm interested to know, and it's probably a little bit of foreshadowing other later questions, but really what trends you're seeing, right? What are the hot topics right now? And I know the one everyone's talking about, or maybe it's just because I'm super consumed with it, is AI, right? And AI coming into, law, right? All lawyers are freaking out right now because, or if they're not, they should at least have an eye on this, because legal services are dropping significantly with the chat GPTs of the world and people kind of DIYing it, good, bad, or indifferent. And so like every other industry, AI will enter dentistry or has entered. And so we see rev cycle management. We see all these things changing. So that's a theme I'd love to just kind of hear about, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, but anything else too that's kind of a shift, if there is, that you're seeing in the market.
Yeah, it's a fast-moving target for sure. AI is. I don't think it's dramatically changed dentistry yet. I think it's going to change everything. We just recorded a podcast that hasn't been published yet, and we had the CFO Sarah Fryer from OpenAI on the podcast. So she was on along with the 2 DSOs and CEO of a membership plan. And so we were just really talking. It was kind of interesting to get her perspective on things, because she kind of comes at it from, OpenAI's perspective, which is really interesting. And then her messaging was that they're getting into healthcare and creating solutions specifically for not just consumers, but also they work with a lot of the larger healthcare systems. So that I thought was interesting. But as far as AI in dentistry, what we saw that kind of came out first that was dental specific were the diagnostic AI solutions, the Pearls, the Overjets, the Vidya Healths, those solutions. So they've been around now for 3-4 years. And so that was kind of the first thing we saw, and it's matured and become better. And I think dentists and DSOs have had a lot more exposure to that type of AI. So you see that becoming mainstream and being used a lot more. So I think that's kind of one of the first takeaways would be that diagnostic AI is something that I think clinicians are more comfortable with. I think there was some fear that it was Big Brother. The DSO was watching the clinicians, and are they going to measure them? And that, I think, is not necessarily the reason behind it. It was more, hey, this is a check for you. This is a way for patients to actually see, hey, I'm showing you what the AI is showing us, and you can visualize it a lot. And it just really a great way for a patient to accept treatment. So it's we call it a treatment acceptance tool or a sales tool as well. So I think that's the one thing that you see is that becoming mainstream or soon to be. The other thing I would say is starting to see a lot of what I would call front desk AI solutions. So whether it is a patient engagement, meaning, hey, I'm a front desk person, I am doing a bunch of different things at the front desk, like greeting patients, seating them, processing payments, calling, processing insurance, or trying to see if what somebody's insurance might be. So I'm on the phone a lot. I'm missing calls. I think they say that 30% of all calls in a dental office are missed, which is a crazy number, 30%. So there's some AI solutions out there that will pick up those calls. So whether it is an AI voice answering the call, if it's missed, or whether it is maybe a text solution where, hey, sorry, we missed your call. It goes right and text them and say, what can we help you with? And then are they scheduling? Is it some type of billing question? So you're starting to see more and more of those solutions. So I think that's kind of not the next frontier, but there's a lot of different solutions that I think will free up time for people at the front desk to do their job better, be a little bit more focused on taking care of the customer that's actually in the office.
So it's an amazing point. I had a DSO previously with some partners that we started in Boston. We scaled that up across the Northeast, and actually had one of my partners on, Eric Pastan, on a prior episode, and we were kind of reminiscing over the old days of when we would secret shop our practices, right? And I would call from the parking lot and see how many rings it took and see how I was welcomed or if they missed the call. And that was always one of the biggest things, is either the call could get missed, or if I do walk in, how long does it take for the front desk to look up and at least say, hey, welcome, I'll be right with you, because I've got like 3 other people in front of them. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I have also heard stirrings a bit of big opportunities with revenue cycle management and insurance. I mean, so many opportunities there that, again, we would spend hours. Myself, when I first hung my first shingle, I'm on the phone trying to check insurance eligibility and welcome people into the practice. I think it sounds like there's a lot of opportunities there as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think RCM, there's a lot. I think even when it comes to coding, I think there's some interesting solutions I've seen. I get a chance to talk to a lot of these cool tech companies and their solutions. Kim and I are limited partners for Dental Innovation Alliance, which is a venture capital fund. So we're investors in some of these companies, and you get to kind of see all the interesting things that are going on or being developed. And we're nowhere near using AI, I think, in dentistry. If we look at it, I don't think anybody really is yet. I think we're just kind of at early innings, whatever that might be. I don't know if it's the first or second inning or the second pitch. I'm not really sure. It seems like it's evolving really quickly. Even, like I said, the CFO of OpenAI, she was like, it's moving quicker than they anticipated. So I'm like, okay, wow. And that's an interesting statement. I do think there's probably a little bit of AI overload. I think there's so many of these solutions out there. So when you're in the audience, like, well, okay, front desk AI. Well, there are like probably 30, probably more than that. But let's say there's 50 solutions out there. When you go to a dental show now, it's not as many clinical products. I would say it's equal clinical products with tech solutions. And so now which one do you use? And so that can be a real challenge too. And I would probably the simple answer to that is you get some customer feedback, find out who they're working with already. And if you've got 10 locations, find out if they're working with customers that are emerging dental groups, or if you're a solo practitioner or have a couple locations, make sure you get some case studies from them, because you don't want to get news. And also I would check their funding too. Are they going to be around for the long term?
Absolutely. And probably pivoting to that side, I could nerd out on AI all day. So to pivot away from it and talk more about other things you're seeing in the market. It's funny, we deal again heavily with sellers, practice sellers and buyers, but a lot of docs looking to sell, and they come to us and they want a multiple that might have been more common in 2020 or 2021 when it was like that gold rush, right, on practices, and DSOs were acquiring, it seemed, at warp speed. And unfortunately, some of those DSOs, some have done very well. Some of them may have acquired too quickly, right? And they have operational struggles, and a few have unfortunately not done that well post-acquisitions. So we get clients who are like, oh, my buddy got this price 5 years ago or multiple there, and things are very different. So really, again, you being at the forefront of this information, what are you hearing, I guess, and what are you seeing as far as how deals are getting done, how they're getting analyzed, diligence, the whole thing?
As far as the information that we compile every month, there certainly is an uptick in M&A and de novo activity. I would say in the past maybe 4 or 5 months, I don't think the economy has changed much. I think we're still in uncertain times. I think we feel like we've kind of settled in to interest rates. They may tick down a little bit. They may, who knows, they could tick up a little bit. But I don't think we're going to see any big, people are comfortable with where the interest rates are. Might not be happy with it, but we've gotten accustomed to it. So there's that. I think we've got the instability, obviously, with what's going on in the Middle East and in Ukraine and Russia. Those things still persist. And we have the uncertainty when we had the tariffs, which are kind of still, everything's still questionable there. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So that's slowed down, I think, a lot of the larger groups, and also with the interest rates, right? We saw this, we saw basically a stoppage in M&A, and that was really interest rate driven, and that was a couple of years ago. So all of a sudden, everybody there was a feeding frenzy. They were paying too much. You had, I would say, buyers that didn't know the market, or they just assumed that interest rates were always going to stay low, and they didn't care. So they were just going to wrap up, buy a bunch of practices in a region, weren't even going to centralize them. They're going to duct tape them together and sell them off to the next person, and go buy at 5 and sell at 10. And that was all they didn't care about the rest of it. Well, that's all. And this is why we have some groups that are in the situations that they're in now. So all that being said, when we track the DSO deal roundup every month, I think what you see is the companies or the DSOs that have grown conservatively over the years, the centralized, grown the right way, are still adding practices more slowly than they once did, more strategically, probably they have a lot more boxes they need to check when they are buying a practice, things that they look at. They're definitely looking at things under more of a microscope. They probably want the docs to make sure that they stay on longer than they once had. They're probably not giving as much cash up front. It's probably more on the back end, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think that's the reality. I do see a lot of growth, and I'm excited about it, with the dentist entrepreneurs. So the dentists out there that are maybe adding a practice or two, or maybe expanding on an existing practice that they have, going, all right, it's the days of a solo practitioner in one location are over. I saw an interesting stat. We could geek out on this too, but ADA and started to track the modality of practice, how many doctors and how many locations. And in 1999, 65% of all dentists were solo practitioners, and the definition of that is one dentist in one location. That's their definition. We fast forward to 2025, I think it's 24 or 25, and that number of solo practitioners, one location, one dentist, is down to like 34%. So pretty much half since 99. But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden that other 66% are DSOs. What that means is that I think about 30% are some type of multi-site DSO or dentist entrepreneur or group practice, whatever. But then the other 33% of that 60%, right? So that bigger piece that are not solo practitioners, one dentist, one location, they are one location but multiple dentists. So I think a lot of clinicians out there, probably in the audience, are working in some type of group practice. So even if it's one location, you've got multiple clinicians working in a bigger practice. So they might be doing multi-specialty, or you've got a lot of general dentists doing dentistry. And so it's shifted, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Just the economies of scale and just the cost cost of operating in a small practice is really difficult. But I love the fact that dentist entrepreneurs are growing, and I think that's where a lot of the excitement is. And the doom and gloom of DSOs taking everything over, I think maybe you can thank a little bit the interest rates for things slowing down. And also, I think DSOs are now looking internally, and they're focused on same store sales, which I think every clinician should be focused on. What are we doing? We've got all these patients. Are we getting the treatment acceptance that we need? Are we offering maybe the patient financing that they need? Because some people are challenged now with interest rates, inflation. They're going, okay, do I fix my car or do I get dental work done? I mean, some people are kind of looking at that as a decision that they need to make. And if you have to get to work, you're probably fixing your car. So I think that you've got to offer up solutions. I think membership plans are exciting. There are solutions out there. So I think it's just a matter of looking at maybe AI is not that solution that you look at right now. Maybe it is adding a membership plan or patient financing or something. You can get patients to say yes to that treatment that you want them to take advantage of.
Yeah, I think the dentist entrepreneur point you make is really interesting because we've had a large portion of our practice over the past couple of years has turned to those folks. I almost call them like an emerging DSO. The doc has 1 or 2 locations and he or she is trying to add 3, 4, 5. And we do a lot of, in addition to M&A, a lot of corporate structuring. So we help them kind of build these things and figure out cap tables and give an associate here some percentage, an associate there some percentage. So everyone's kind of motivated. But it's been pretty cool to see that there are these alternate paths to scale. And then eventually maybe they do sell to a DSO of their own. But it's been kind of interesting to see how that unfolds. And I fully agree that there's been like a looking inward a bit. And I learned this from experience firsthand. When we were scaling practices, it was get units as quickly as you could, more units, buy, open, de novos, and it was Band-Aids all over the place. And we didn't realize till late in the game, I mean, it was probably a 12-year run of our group before we exited that we had a lot of internalizing to do, if that's the word, and really figure out how can we improve operations efficiencies. And this is well before the world of AI. So it is cool to kind of see that it's maybe a bit of a scary unknown hanging over us with AI and the world and economics and politically. But there are still things happening, and there are some positives that are coming out of it.
People still have to go to the dentist, so there's that, and it's still very, very stable. It might not be quite as attractive to private equity as it once was, and maybe private equity wasn't necessarily the best funder for dentistry. It's to kind of look at a 3 to 5 year horizon. You don't get massive growth in dentistry unless you're really doing a lot of acquisition. And I just don't think this is a market for acquisitions, or a lot of acquisitions right now.
I like the hot take because I think it is, I mean, we get calls, you probably do too. Every week there's a new group that's kind of done veterinary, done optometry. Now they have eyes on dental or they've done dental, they want to go bigger. But it's interesting that the point you make. So you feel like it truly takes probably a longer runway than the typical PE window of 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to an investment banker today, and he was talking about the same subject, and he said it's almost more where a family fund, somebody that's going to hang on to things longer, sovereign wealth fund, some investor like that. I think there's other creative ways to get money now. I mean, banks can be challenging, especially when you get beyond a certain number of locations. A lot of them just don't understand dentistry or don't understand dentistry at scale. They look at the risk of lending to one clinician that's running a practice and it's relatively low to no risk. And so they'll do that all day long. And then when you start to add locations, that's where it gets challenging. But there are some things, you even see the rise of sale leasebacks where the people you're selling your real estate, you're taking that cash infusion and then buying another location with that. So there are some creative opportunities now that didn't exist before.
Are there strategies that you're seeing that are new? I mean, it might be the sale leaseback you touched on. There's more of that. Are there other strategies you're seeing groups implement for growth that's have been working, and maybe conversely that maybe no longer work? Kind of a couple of years ago, maybe it was a great way to scale, but maybe it's not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sale leaseback is relatively new and makes a lot of sense. So that's been, for dentist entrepreneurs, I think that has been relatively successful. I think, on the PE side of things, not to say that there aren't some. It's interesting. For every doctor founder that's partnered with PE that's been happy, there's another one, maybe more than that it hasn't been happy. So you've got to really find that it's the marriage. Probably everybody's heard this before. So if you've got a platform where you're looking for an investor, PE makes a lot of sense. We just saw Park Dental Partners go public, right? Now it was a relatively small public raise. It was $20 million, but that was very interesting. And I know the people at Park really, really well. We just actually went out there and shot a podcast on site. So that'll be another podcast. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be
plug the podcast. It's great.
Plugging the podcast so much, but we got a couple really, really cool ones coming up, some great discussions, and that was interesting. And so we talked about the reasoning behind, well, why did you go public? We haven't seen anybody go public in dental. I mean, we had Dental Corp in Canada that was public. They just went private. We had Perfect Teeth, way about 10, 15 years ago that was publicly traded. And we've had some others that were a couple of decades back that were publicly traded, but it's mostly private equity, privately held. So we don't get a lot of insight, right? We just don't know. People can say that the group can tell you that they're doing well, but they don't have to disclose anything. So now with Park, we'll get a real chance to take a look at their books and every 90 days to see how they're doing. So I'm excited about that. But they looked at it as just a better fit for there, and only a partial public raise. So there's only, and then the rest of the group is doctor owners. So it was complementary to what they were doing. And they actually deployed that capital and did a couple acquisitions immediately and expanded outside of that Wisconsin, Minnesota area. And they actually ended up in Arizona, which was interesting. So I kind of made a jump there. So I think they have a lot of snowbirds in their market that were in Arizona, and that was the reason. And it's a relatively easy state to do business in and set up a structure there. So I'm excited about that. But I think you're looking, just try to look for banks that are going to work with you as you start to scale up. And I think that's probably still the majority of the dentist entrepreneurs are looking at banks to lend them money.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I think we're our own clients. We saw 2020, 2021, early 22 deals like we couldn't keep up. And things got eerily quiet shortly thereafter as rates kind of started to apparently not be 2% forever. And then I would say over the last year or so, we've seen things ramp up, and then Q4 was nuts. But a lot of those newer deals have been JVs, kind of almost like pseudo JV, and just really different structures from the traditional. The traditional deals are certainly still happening. We also do doctor to doctor private work here and there, but I've noticed an uptick in the JVs and just kind of different structures that I think still gives the PE groups what they're trying to achieve, but still gives the doc some autonomy.
Yeah, and I think even aside from the M&A side of things, for the younger doctors that are coming in that don't have a practice to sell, there are these pathways to partnership, which I think make a lot of sense because there's issues with doctor turnover as well at a lot of groups. So in order to really kind of engage these younger clinicians, just talking to the Elite Dental Partners team there, and they've created something called Elite Advantage. And the idea behind it is without cutting a check, as a clinician, you can basically earn into, I think, up to 51% of a practice, which is great. So you don't now have to, a lot of the times it's, well, yeah, if you're an associate, you've got to also give us X amount of dollars, right? And so now it's more of an earn-in, which makes a lot of sense. And yeah, you were talking about how you had all these deals in 2020 and 2021. I saw an interesting stat from an investment banking firm that I think it was the top 50 DSOs from 2021 to 2022. So the top 50 grew by practice count 24%. So from 21 to 22, from 22 to 23, that dropped to 12%. And then 23 to 24, it pretty much flatlined. It was 4%.
Wow.
So that's how the big players, almost all private equity backed, were growing. 24%, 12, and then flat. And I think we're probably at that, probably 4 or 5%. Maybe it's ticked up a tiny bit from 24 to 25, but it's relatively, the growth is not in acquisitions as much. It's in what are we doing? Like, what are we bought all this stuff. Now, is it working for us? And if it's not, what do we do? How do we grow each practice? Is it treatment acceptance? Is it getting more patients in the door? Is it multi-specialty? Or do we dump some of this bad practices? Do we sell them off? And so again, that's going on. You don't hear about it, but it's some of that's going on.
I mean, we just closed a deal last week that was exactly one of those scenarios where a large group was frankly trying to unload certain locations. And so we had a client buy, and there was a lot of diligence that went into it because clearly the practice wasn't working. It was a bit of a fire sale.
Yeah, and there are some groups out there, and I think some dentist entrepreneurs that are really good at what I would call like the fixer-up model. So they can identify like a good opportunity, maybe in a market in their region where they practice, and really take advantage of that. And you can get some good deals out there, but there's some risk because you really have to know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess taking out your crystal ball, the next 12 to 24 months, I mean, what's got you excited and concerned, frankly, maybe beyond AI, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but what else are you maybe seeing come about in the next couple of years?
It's a great question. I wish the crystal ball wasn't so cloudy at times, but yeah, I think probably the next 24 months, I think the economy is going to be pretty much as it is now. I don't see it drastically improving. I don't see it drastically getting worse. I think we're going to be kind of maybe these little blips here of uncertainty. But what that means is more of the same from the large DSOs out there. Focus on same store efficiencies. There's a lot of focus on cost containment, which makes sense. And when you look at it from a product standpoint, the things that you buy for a dental practice, it's only like 8 or 9% of your total expenses. So you're not really going to be able, even if you cut 10% of that 8% or 7%, it's not that much money. It's really not that much. So you look at things like human capital. We struggle with hiring people now. So I think if you can find AI solutions that can help free up the people, I'm not saying you're going to replace the people at the front desk, but I think you can free people up to do things that are going to impact your top line, which would be treatment acceptance. Yet I think that front desk role is still incredibly important, but let's get them to do things that are revenue generating instead of just time sucks, which on the phone with insurance is the one thing I think of. What I still am very, very excited about is the dentist entrepreneurs. I look at all these groups out there. We do an emerging dental groups to watch award every year, and you get to really know these founder doctors, and it's just incredible. Everybody's doing things differently, but they're all really, really successful. I think kind of another thing too, and I'm sure you've seen this, when you started your group, there really wasn't a blueprint out there. And now we have proven models, and we have different, you had practice management consultants, but now you really do have DSO consultants, people that have scaled DSOs up, that have the experience that can now help you. So it's not like you're feeling around in the dark like you probably were with your founders. So there are pathways to success. You just have to kind of choose the right one, and there are different models out there that'll work. But I think that's what I'm excited about is the younger clinicians that can get out there and build these groups for the future.
It's funny you say that, as one of the first things you said was, when we started talking earlier, was DSO wasn't even really a thing, or at least a term. And so when we started, I know I'm dating both of us here, but when we started, it wasn't a DSO, right? It was a group practice and multi-location. So this whole concept of DSO evolved, and when we were finishing, we were like, oh, that's what we built, and that's what this is. And you could centralize some of these things, but it's cool to hear that it's not all doom and gloom as opposed to some of the stuff we see maybe online or hear about, but there is some excitement out there.
Yeah, and I do think the one last thing is that you will see some of these large groups, they consolidate the consolidators, right? So I think we're going to see some large groups that have been operated really, really well take advantage of maybe some really good deals out there. So I think you're going to see some really big acquisitions, mergers, probably acquisitions in the next year, 2 years, where some of these groups, the PE firms do not want to hold them anymore. beginner that will probably transact with a strategic.
It's going to be interesting to watch because so many of these groups have been talking about it for a while, and within reason, it's the 5-year, 7-year horizon, but some of these groups are getting there. So
there are a couple deals that are really close right now.
Oh, good. I'll be keeping an eye then on your website to see what gets announced in case there's any inside info. But Bill, I could pepper you all day with questions. I'm super grateful, truly, for the time, for the knowledge you can share with folks. I can't emphasize enough what a tremendous resource Group Dentistry Now, yourself, Kim. I mean, everything you guys have built, and it's really a privilege to kind of have you on. So I appreciate it. Are there certain places you want to direct folks where they can find you or where they can learn more, obviously, about GDN?
Sure, yeah. It's groupdentistrynow.com is the website. We do a weekly newsletter that you can subscribe. It's free. We've got about 10,000 subscribers to that, and we do not spam you. So it's just once a week, and what we do is we collect all of the content that we've delivered on our website, our podcasts, our webinars, and we put it in a nice newsletter. Give you a little bit of information on the upcoming events that are going on in the industry. That's in there too. You can find out our podcast. You can find that on our website. And I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there pretty easily. It's Neumann with a U and 2 N's at the end, so it's spelled a little differently. But yeah, and then Kim Larson is our co-founder. She's LASON. You can find her there as well.
Amazing. Well, Bill seems to be everywhere. He says he's not, but it surely seems like he is. So, Bill, thank you for the time and excited to see what's coming down the road.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. This is a lot of fun.
All right.